Hey, welcome back to the Leadership Studio. Tonight we have a great guest. Diane Cervenka is here from Catholic Charities. So we're going to talk to you guys a little bit and with her a little bit about fundraising. But before we get going tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit about your major assignment that you have that will be coming up. And this is your mock fundraising campaign. And there have been a number of questions about it. So I just want to go over it very briefly. I know that Professor Desai has posted some stuff within Blackboard so that you can see what to do. But I wanted to talk about that. What you want to do is pick the organization that you've been working with. Specifically, the first page is going to be about 10 to 15 pages long. The first page, you want to make sure that we understand what's happening with the organization. Around the second page, what we want to see you do is analyze the mission statement. Do you like this mission statement? Does it need to change? What would you change? Is there a proposed mission statement that you would propose? Write something around that. The third part of this is a case statement. And a case statement is really you making the case why someone should donate to this particular organization. And we want that to be a significant piece of work on your part, looking at the case. And you could also refer to your text. You might get some ideas from the text on what you should be doing there. Next, we really want you to do a sample piece of direct mail or a direct email where you're actually soliciting someone. We want to see an example of you asking people for money for this particular organization. And then we also want you to do a proposal on what you might do to expand the donor base. What might you do to get more people on the mailing list so that when you do one of these letters, there's plenty of people to mail it to? So some examples about that, be a specific and detailed 1 to 2 pages or so on that. And then the major piece is you focusing on a unique fundraising campaign. That could be a special event, that could be a special piece of mail or printing, but something unique and special on how you would increase money. You should have a budget. This is how much money you want to raise. This is how you're going to do it. We can answer some of those questions specifically if you have those. Professor Desai or myself are available online if you have some of those questions. But we wanted to start off the evening sort of letting you know about this. And again, make sure that you're using your texts because that will really help you in terms of looking especially at that fundraising campaign. So I want to get to Diane Cervenka. Diane, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
And the work that you do for Catholic Charities is extraordinary. I mean, Catholic Charities is one of the preeminent nonprofits in our country and certainly here in Houston. And raising money for Catholic Charities, you would think it's very easy, right? It's just a matter of selling people on what you guys are doing and the money is going to flow. But you and I both know it's not that easy. If you were writing a book today, Diane, and this is a question that we ask everyone who sits in your chair, what would the chapters be like in regards to fundraising? You know, what are some of the real important aspects of fundraising that need to be covered in a book written by Diane Cervenka?
I think each area of development would need to have its own chapter. Director of Development and what their job entails and the lingo they use, the marketing person, the Director of Special Events, the grant writers, the people that handle your database. All of these pieces, all of these people help to create the team. No one person does development by themselves. I know as being head of the team, I've got to rely on everyone, and for marketing to work, they need to work with the people who work with the database and work with the grant writers. We always might go to them just to have them look over our work because they are great writers. But it's the whole team and looking at what everyone does and how you can work together and collaborate to make a strong development department.
And how big is your team right now at Catholic Charities?
We have 8 people on my team.
Wow. And give me an idea, and we talked a little bit about this before the camera went on. What are you guys expected each year to bring in? Really, that's the work of the 8. You know, what is it that people expect in terms of foundation money, corporate money, special events? What are you guys expected to bring in?
Our department is, we have a $29 million operating budget. My department's going to touch about 20 million of that.
Wow.
We have a Cabrini department that kind of handles their own development. So our attorneys are going to write their own grants, and some of their services are fee-based. So that part I won't claim credit for.
Right.
But the other 20 million we're going to touch in some way.
Wow. And if you take away any money that you get from the government, how much does that end up being about?
We get a significant portion from the government.
Yeah.
So,
But you have to raise that too. I mean, you have to write those grants.
Those,
and,
those are grants, but that is about 60% of our budget.
Yeah. It's a lot of money and it's a lot of pressure on the 8 of you, right? To make sure that you raise this, because in a sense, and this is true of every development office, right? The entire organization is very dependent upon you.
Yes, I mean, if we don't raise the money, there's 2 things that could happen. People are going to lose their jobs, our clients are not going to be served.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's a sad situation either way.
It is.
When you break down the 8, what are the different 8 people doing in the organization, your people?
I have 2 grant writers. I have 1.5 person that work the database. I have a director of special events. I have someone who does marketing. I have a graphic designer, and I have an admin part-time.
And what is your favorite part of your job?
I come from special events. That's my strength. Mm-hmm. Raising money with special events and doing the special events.
And what are some of the special events that Catholic Charities does?
We have a gala every 2 years. 2 years ago, we honored Mrs. Ray White, mm-hmm. and we were able to net $1.47 million. Wow. So we were one of the top 10 fundraising events of the year of 2012. Mm-hmm. We do an event called A Cardinal's Christmas, which is every Christmas. It's a luncheon, a family luncheon at River Oaks with Cardinal DiNardo, and he brings the kids up to talk about the true meaning of Christmas. In the position now, appeals are part of our responsibility, and I've chosen to bring them in-house because I think we have the talent to do them in-house instead of contracting a writer and having a marketing company do it. So last Christmas, in between my team, we put together the Christmas appeal, and we had a budget. We were supposed to bring in $160,000, and we had never broken $100,000. So that was a little.
Did you bring in 160?
We brought in 280.
Wow.
So we learned a lot.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hair pulling, screaming, yelling. That that happens sometimes. But we worked together as a team, and we were able to do it and do it successfully.
That's amazing. That's amazing. When you look at all the work that you do, is there a particular area that you're most proud of? I mean, is there a particular program or thing that you guys are doing specifically?
We have 15 different programs, and you work with the children, and they're wonderful. Who doesn't love kids?
Yeah.
But then you work with the seniors; they're just as wonderful. You work with the immigrants and the refugees. They all have different stories and
powerful stories too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have an abused women's shelter. There are so many that are so special. We have counseling programs, so. You think one's special, and then you hear the story from another one, because a lot of development is telling the stories of your clients, mm-hmm. and that's why the people give you the money they do, because you have these clients with needs, and you figure out what the donor's passion is. So no, I can't say I have a favorite.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit, Diane, of how you became a development professional, because you didn't start off as a little girl saying you were going to grow up and be a development professional. As a matter of fact, coming out of college, you weren't even thinking about this.
No, I actually was in the for-profit world. I was a pharmaceutical rep for 15 years, and the company I worked for was bought and doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. So it was time to reevaluate what I wanted to do for my career. I had always volunteered with organizations, with events, and so when it was time to decide what to do, I realized nights and weekends I spent doing volunteer work, so that's when I chose to get into development. And there happened to be a position, Director of Special Events, open at Catholic Charities, and so that's how I got into it. And I have to admit, for the first couple months, it was very difficult for me because I kept thinking, I need to get to work. And it's like, I am at work. This is my job, and it's the most wonderful job in the world.
Wow. Was it hard initially, that transition going from the for-profit world and then becoming the event coordinator? I mean, did you find it difficult in terms of learning about development?
Not really, because again, I had done so much work as a volunteer, and a lot of the organizations I volunteered with, we were responsible for the whole event. We worked with the budget and the invitations and selling the tables. So we did everything that like now my department does. But some organizations are lucky enough to have a group of volunteers that take on the whole responsibility, and then some are not. So I had the exposure of all the different areas of development, and coming from the world of pharma, it's a sales job, and I think a lot of development is similar. A lot of people think all we do in development is go and ask people. The ask is probably less than 5% of my job. It's educating people. It's letting them know about what we do and listening to them. A lot of people also think, I'm just going to sit and tell you what I do. No, it's listening and finding out what is their passion. And in between 15 different programs, finding out, okay, what is their passion, and then I can focus in and tell them what we do regarding children, seniors.
I find this to be, and I'm sure this is true with you as well, that in talking with donors, I would say 99% of the time, or at least 95% of the time, I really like talking to them, and you become sort of friends with a lot of these donors. I mean, do you find the same thing, that it's not so hard because you're just going out to visit your buddy, and then at the same time, you may talk about a particular program that you could maybe use some help with, but you don't even talk about that in a very sort of very actionable way right off the bat. It sort of just comes along the way, right?
No, development is, it takes a while. It's not, you don't meet someone and immediately ask them for $50,000. But you do become friends with them, and sometimes you do get into a situation where you've got to raise some money, and so you do have to go to them, but that isn't common. And it makes it a little bit tougher because they have become your friends, and you are, you're going to their house, their family, you're going to events with them. They do become your friends, and it is a very nice part of your job that you've just expanded your friends, and they are people that you could call, and if you needed anything, they would be there for you.
Yeah, it's sort of a nice thing. Tell us a little bit about your background, Diane. You're from Houston originally?
I was born and raised here, born in Herman Hospital, raised in the Sharpstown area, and then went to the University of Texas.
You went to Sharpstown High too, right?
I did.
Yeah.
And then came back here, and I live in Midtown now, so right by the office.
And would you ever consider leaving Houston at any point, or is this it for you?
I think this is it for me. My whole family lives here.
Yeah.
So I'm very close with my family, and to see them on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah. And you've been a pharmaceutical representative. Now you're a director of development. Do you ever want to be an executive director, or do you just love development so much that you'll probably stay there? I mean, what does the future hold for you potentially?
I don't know if I'd want that responsibility of an executive director.
Yeah.
I know the responsibilities of development. I don't know about taking on more responsibility. I know a little bit about what goes on with our programs, and also under me is crisis management. So if we have a situation, I've got to be aware of it, need to work with Pierpont Communications to get a press release out, because that's one of the things that can kill you is if you are not timely in getting the information out and being transparent.
You work with Nancy Sims over at Pierpont?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I love
her. I cannot imagine me ever taking Cynthia's job. She is safe for me.
Well, Cynthia may not be there forever too. So,
don't say that.
I know. I love her. So let me ask you about development in Houston. When you look at the landscape of nonprofits, obviously, and you and I could look around Houston and we'd see some nonprofits that are overperforming, that are great fundraising organizations, and some that are underperforming. When you look at the overperformers, sort of like the people that are doing a wonderful job fundraising, which nonprofits do you point to usually?
I look at the hospitals, and we've got the largest med center in the world, and they also have more money than we have. The MD Andersons and Memorial Hermans, you see a lot of their marketing out there. They have the larger departments. I just think they can do more. I mean, the more money you have. I shouldn't say the more money you have, but I think they're also very efficient and very effective with their money because it's not necessarily the money you have, it's how you work it. And I think they have very strong departments, and you see it with their fundraising.
Yeah. But you walk through their hallways, and aesthetically, you know that they've raised a lot of money.
Yes.
I mean, it feels like you're in an environment where they've raised a lot of money as well. And does it just kill you when you see organizations that could be raising a lot more money? I mean, I'm sure I know tons of organizations that I feel like, wow, they could be doing so much better. Yes,
I know I volunteer with some organizations that I know they could do a better job. One of the big things is your relationships you have with your donors, and really working to make those as strong as they can be. Like you were saying, you become friends with your donors, and you really, you have to treat them well. It's a lot harder to get a new donor than it is to keep one.
Oh, wow. Isn't it though? Yeah. There will be some students in the class that maybe, a lot of the students are currently working in nonprofits, but some of them may say, well, I might like a step up, and so I'm going to work in development. And a lot of jobs in the nonprofit world are in development. When you look for someone in the development field to work for you, what sort of things are you looking for? What are some of the qualities that you're looking for in a development professional?
Well, depending on which area.
Of course.
And mine is so diverse, from someone who's good with computers and databases to someone who can do events to someone in who might be the development, like a director of development. I would look for whatever skill that area needs, but if I'm looking specifically for a development person, someone who has the connections, who is not afraid to ask, because eventually asks do come in, but someone who has the ability to have those relationships and has established themselves, even if it's a smaller organization, that they can build up their portfolio and they can make the ask. They have been able to get a gift of, if it's significant to them, be it $5,000, $10,000, and what steps did they take to get there? If they can, show me that, if they can walk me through that, that's important.
Yeah, very good. I wanted to, let me ask you another question before I go to some of the classes questions that they've tweeted in. When you look at what you've accomplished at Catholic Charities, you mentioned the one special event where you did quite well 2 years ago. If you had to suggest to a nonprofit the best single way to raise money, would you say doing a big special event, or is it so dependent upon that nonprofit, or is there a better way to raise money? That's sort of an open-ended question, I'm sorry.
Well, and I don't think you can say one thing. I think you've got to have a mix. You've got to have the appeals, the special events, the foundations. I think it's got to be a mix of all of them at least with our organization, because we are so diverse. We're not going to have one donor. We're not going to have one event, one grant that's going to sustain us. We're going to have to go out to all of them and use what we can, or do what we can do, reaching out to all the different ways to raise money in order to achieve what we need to achieve.
Is there such a thing as having too many special events? I know that my buddy Brian over at the food bank, I think they have 15 big special events. At Children at Risk, we have 3 big special events. Can you have too many?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have donor fatigue, and that's why we only have our gala every other year. You just run out of people who are going to come. I mean, you've got to differentiate your event. And Houston is such a event-heavy city.
It is.
You know you're going to have your gala on the same night as someone else. You know, if you have an event, who are you going to compete with? Because you are going to compete with someone. So, you know, trying to find something unique and make it successful. But doing an event is, it takes a lot. You know, it's a lot of stress on the staff and on your donors. So I think if you do too many, you just start diluting yourself. And so if you just keep it to, you know, a few, then you can make them really count. And
do you have pressure because you do your event every other year and you do so well? Is there a little bit of pressure from the board? Like, why don't we do this every year? We do so well.
No, it's the board who actually wants to do it every other year.
Very good.
Because they're afraid of the donor fatigue.
Yeah. But you could get sort of caught up with that cash, can't you? All this unrestricted money that you have.
Yeah, we, you know, try to balance it out, and half of the money from the gala will go into the next year. So that's the way it is set up.
Yeah, very good. Let me ask a couple of questions that have come in. Monica Sines was the first one to tweet in a question today, and she wanted you to describe your management style and how it works in your current position. Great question.
And that was a little challenging for me because I was their peer last year, and now I'm the head of development. So, and this is the way I've always tried to be, is for one thing, if you have a problem, come to me with a solution as well. And I will listen to anything you have to say, and if we need to have a discussion and get different people involved, I will listen to you. But the decision is ultimately mine, but I'm not going to say, we're going to do this, and I won't listen to what you have to say. If you have a valid reason for me or for us to do things a different way, come to me and talk to me, and, you know, if it is valid, then we may change it. So I try to be open and listen, and, you know, if you give me a good reason to change things, I will.
Does your staff have the pressure of you saying there's certain amounts that people have to raise? Because I know in some of the hospitals they'll say, well, you have to raise $3 million a year, or you know, do you guys do something like that?
With our special events, with each event, they have a budget that they have to attain, a goal. Marketing has it with the special appeals. Grant writing has it with
so they do have goals
we are a pretty goal-oriented department.
It's just not the same all across the board. It's just sort of, it's a sort of a rational decision on why each goal is there.
I ask my people to help me with the budget. Can you do this? Because, again, if I don't make the money, then, you know, the consequences are pretty dire. So the way I like to look at it is we have, you know, like each of us has like 20 people we're responsible for in Catholic Charities. So it's like, keep that in mind when we're doing our jobs, because, you know, one of the things about development is, you know, if you go out, I truly believe if you go out and you do your job the best you can every day, we'll make the goals. I did not make our budget outrageous, that there's rationale behind the numbers. They can be attained, but you have to work hard to get those numbers.
So when you create a foundation budget for your grant writers, it's based on actual foundations where you think you're going to get money and how much you think you're going to get from each of them.
Yeah, we're looking at, our history over the past 5 years. It's like, if we've never received money from someone, I'm not going to put in the budget we're going to get $100,000 this year. If we've received $20,000 from them for the last 3 years, yeah, I'm going to put them in the budget. Maybe I'll increase the budget by 5%, thinking maybe we can find new foundations or increase our ask. With the Christmas campaign, we get a $120,000 match from Scanlon. We blew that out with our Christmas. So maybe this year we ask them for $130,000.
What a nice thing to get a match like that, right?
I know, it was.
It helps the numbers, doesn't it? So Marta has an interesting question. Marta Alvarenga wants to know about how do you convince foundations to do renewal grants? Renewing some of that.
Well, usually with foundations, you have to give them a letter. You have to write a report after the grant is done and tell them if you've achieved your numbers or not. And usually with that information, then they will renew the grant or give you a new grant. But you are telling them that you've done what you said you would do with the money, and so if you do what you say you're going to do, then you have a pretty good chance of getting that money again.
And a lot of that is based upon your relationship that you have with those grant officers potentially, right? I mean, you want to make sure, again, that these are people you're friendly with, and that helps along the line, doesn't it?
The grant officers or the trustees are really good.
Right.
Some grant officers we've gotten the information from that we need to go forward with the grant. Sometimes we have to go to the trustees and find out what they're looking for, and a lot of times they will tell you what program and what amount to ask for.
And that's an important point, right? There are a lot of family foundations in Houston where it's not necessarily a grant officer where you would think that you talk to someone at the foundation. It's talking to these trustees, members of the board, and oftentimes family members of the board, these trustees, yeah. Amy Rogers had a good question. She wanted to know, what are some of the biggest mistakes that nonprofits make when entering into a capital campaign? Have you ever done a capital campaign?
I have to say, I've never done one. So,
how about just major mistakes that nonprofits make?
I don't think sometimes they appreciate the donors. And sometimes they'll just go to them when they need money. You need to keep them informed and educated about what you are doing all the time with your programs. It's not just to contact them when, again, you're on a campaign.
Amy Guzman wants to know, when you're planning a big event, how should the development team prioritize tasks or milestones?
Well, depending on...
And Amy's been talking to you, hasn't she?
She has.
Yeah, so
I know.
good.
This is, I talked to her yesterday.
Very good.
You have a timeline. With our gala, the timeline will go out about a year. We're having our gala in May, and we are hoping to ask our honoree for 2016 this month. So they can be at the event and see what they like, what they don't like. You always, the ideal is to have your people in place to be at the event prior to the one that you're asking them to be the honoree or the chair, so they can, again, have a good idea, decide what they like, what they don't like. And you work your timeline from there. You look at, you'll create a pyramid. Who are you going to ask to be the presenting sponsors, and at what levels are you going to sell tables to get to the dollar amount you want? You look at the invitation or the underwriter letter, that, how far out do you want to send that? Then everything you need to do, you'll put on this timeline. And I've found you can get pretty good timelines if you Google them.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So it'll give you all the details you need, because there are a lot of little details.
So you just Google timeline for special event timeline? Wow.
I mean, getting your venue, in Houston, we are such a heavy event city, reserving the hotel, sometimes that may determine when you have your event if you can get the space that you need.
And are you reserving a year or two in advance on a lot of
Yes.
this? Yeah, we usually do about a year in advance. And people don't think about that. People think, well, maybe 3 months in advance, but no, you're talking a long time.
Yeah, you have got your hotel close to a year in advance.
And give our students an idea of when you're doing a Catholic Charities big event, and what's your big gala called? What is it called?
It's called the Spirit of Charity Gala.
Sounds very, very Catholic. So the Spirit of Charity Gala, if I'm going to go and buy a table, what are my options? What from low to high? How much would I pay for a 10-person table?
Our tables range from $5,000 to $100,000. At $100,000, you will get 2 tables. Then it goes from 100 to 50, and then 50 down to 5,000 are one table of 10. So 50, 25, 15, 10, and 5. 5.
But 5 is the cheapest table that I can find.
Yes.
And this is sometimes harder for people to understand when you explain to people on the street. You know, I think when we first entered, both you and I, when we first entered the whole idea of nonprofits, you know, the first is like, well, what do you get for $5,000? And I think people who are buying $5,000 or $100,000 tables, they're not thinking that, right? They're thinking, how much am I donating? And they're not so interested in how much what they get for it.
Yeah, it's not what's going to be on my table or.
You don't get $5,000 worth of food. I mean,
no,
you really don't.
No, and you'll have a fair market value of your event. And if you paid $5,000 or you paid $100,000, you still have got the same fair market value. For our gala is going to be $120 a person, and that just entails like the food. You're not going to take all the costs of the event. You're only taking specific costs of the event, like the food, and that will give you your fair market value that you're gonna. That's going to be what the person can write off of their taxes, or that they can't write off their taxes. The other part is tax deductible. But yeah, when you're dealing with someone who's buying a $100,000 table, they're doing it because they believe in your organization and they want to give to you. It's not what they're going to get in return. And that's what a lot of our donors, and donors in general, they believe in the organization, they want to support you, and they have the ability at this level to do it.
And where will you do your big event?
It will be at Hilton Americas on May 17th.
Which is the largest venue in Houston for these types of events?
Right now.
And how many tables will you expect to sell?
Hopefully we will be around 80 tables.
Yeah. But they won't all be $100,000 tables.
No, we'll probably have 100,000. 2 years ago we had 100,000, and then it went down from there. Usually we'll have one presenting sponsor, which will be the big table.
And do you guys sort of celebrate around the office when you get the $100,000 table?
Oh, yes. I asked if I could have a bell by my door. And it's like, I get so excited. I'm like, who do I tell? Who do I run to first? Yeah.
I think that's also another thing. People think that once you're raising more money, you don't celebrate. But you celebrate all those little victories, don't you?
I even celebrate. I celebrate anything. Yeah, of course, there are times when I've gotten in a $500,000 check and I've counted the zeros multiple times. But yeah, even the $5,000 tables, we are excited about.
Because for someone, that was a substantial donation, right?
And we have some people who have more treasures than others. And yes, that was significant, and we appreciate everything. And even the people who can't come, who just make a donation, we appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
So I just get excited when any money comes in. They think that I go and I, tackle the postman.
Yeah. Let me ask you another gala question, because I think this is very interesting, and you've been more detailed about any special event of anyone that we've had here. Part of raising money at some of these big events is the big auction, and your expectation of how much you raise. You always build in that you're going to raise a certain portion from the auction. What do you guys do for your auction, and what does that look like? And what other types of money comes in on the night of? What do you do for that?
Well, I have always been taught that your auction should pay for your event. This year, we're going in with such a strong auction, it's going to pay for the event plus some.
Wow.
I attend a lot of events, and I have to admit this is one of the strongest I've ever done. I chaired Victory's auction last year, and we brought in over $700,000. And But this one is going to be really good. We've got private jets. We've got a dinner at Damien's for 100 people. We've got Harry Connick's float for riding on his float for 2 people at his Mardi Gras parade.
With Harry Connick.
Yes,
Wow.
and going to his ball afterwards at the Ritz-Carlton. We've got the McInvale's house in Colorado. We've got a lot of fabulous events. So the auction is one portion. We also will do an event called Paddles Up, and that will be where you say someone for $1,000 you could feed 20 of our seniors for a year. So people will put their paddles up,
yes.
and so we'll do, start at $1,000, then do $500. We'll pay for 20 kids counseling for a year. You give a dollar amount that people are just donating, that you say what that will pay for. So with the Paddles Up, you'll also raise money, and then you might do a raffle or some other little items. But the big money that's going to come in from the night is going to be from the auction and the Paddles Up.
And for that evening, how much money do you think you'll end up making on the auction?
We're hoping around $200,000.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, that's pretty good. I was at an event recently for Boys and Girls Country, and they raised, Steve Martin was their speaker. He didn't do any comedy. And he signed a guitar, or banjo, and he strummed it. It wasn't his banjo, and $80,000 in one auction item. Just amazing, isn't it? So people are quite generous in Houston.
We are very fortunate. We've got a great group of people here. Of course, we are very fortunate for oil and gas.
Yeah.
But we do have a very generous donor base here.
Yeah.
That really, they give a lot.
But that's part of it. I mean, you can't just throw a big event and expect that the auction will make a lot of money. The right people have to be there who have the capacity to give as well. That's important.
And you kind of expect a lot of board members to be there and buy tables, and so you can suggest that they bring in people that will have the ability to buy the private jets.
Yeah.
And you do want to get the information out on these items, because a lot of times people aren't coming to an event thinking, oh, I'm going to buy a dinner for 100 people. You want to get this information out to the people who are going to be attending so they can think about it, because it might be something they're going to buy for their business, or maybe they have a personal event coming up, a wedding, or something. So let them know what you have, especially your live auction items that are going to be more expensive, so they can be thinking about it. And maybe they're going to get a group together and purchase an item. So getting the information out to the people ahead of time.
Very good. So Amy had another question that I wanted to ask, and she wanted to know what of Catholic Charities programs is easiest to fund. So when you go out there, and is there a program that you think, well, if no one has an idea what they want to fund, we could present this one, because this one appeals to a lot of people?
No. I would think most people would be children, but we don't have any that we can just go out and know we can get money. Abused women's shelter, you would think would be easy, but it's not.
Yeah.
Houston Area Women's Center can tell you that. None of them are easy.
Yeah, we're bringing Tara Pope on in the coming weeks from the Houston Area Women's Center. Sharhonda Cox had a good question. She wanted to know about asking amount for potential donors. When you're meeting with a donor, how do you determine what you're going to ask? And this may be after a number of meetings, but how do you get to that figure?
Well, also with a lot of the donors, you can see at other events what they're doing, and you have a donor history. I talked about the database. In our database, we have all the donations they've ever made. You can do research on people and find out maybe some things they've donated to recently and kind of figure your amount out that way. But it is something you need to put some thought into. Some people, are afraid to ask too high, and it's like, but sometimes you may ask too low, and then you see that the person gave 5 times what they just gave you, and you may ask them, why, and it's like, because you didn't ask.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't ask, you're never going to get. You're going to get a lot more no's than you get yeses, and that's one of the things about development. You have to be able to handle people telling you no.
If you get depressed by a no, this is not the field to go into, because
No.
many people are going to say, well, not right now. It's really interesting, but you see that a lot.
And the ask is less than 5% of what you do. Really what you're doing is you're educating people about your organization. If you're going to continue the development with them, it means that they're interested in something that you do. So you find out what it is. A lot of times I don't even have to ask the people for the money, or they will just say, how much do you want? They'll ask me. They know what I'm, I'm in development for Catholic Charities. If I'm meeting with them, maybe it might not have been that meeting that I was going to ask, but that's eventually what it's going to get to. So our donors are not ignorant,
Right.
so you never want to treat them that way. But it's not as you're not constantly asking them for money. You're developing a relationship with them, and eventually it may get there. Or like I said, I've had donors who are like, okay, I'm ready to give you $50,000. Okay. Or sometimes the check may just come in the mail. I mean, the $500,000 check came in the mail, and I was not expecting it, and I had not asked for it.
That's good enough to ring the bell.
Yeah, I just don't have a bell. But I think that should be able to buy me a bell. But, now I forgot what I was.
That's okay. Nicole has a question. She wants to know, this is very similar to a previous question, what excites you most about the organization's work in our community?
Just like none of our programs are easy, they're all wonderful. And I can't pick one. I think it would be children, or I think it would be abused women,
Right.
or I think it would be seniors. But I mean, you meet all of the clients, and they're all wonderful, and it makes you glad to do what you do. It makes you want to go to work and help them. And I'm just very fortunate that I got the opportunity to be in the position I am to do this. And that there's not one I love them all.
Richard Kendall wants to know about, and this is an interesting question, fundraising requirements for board members. It's such an interesting thing. I remember one of my galas, and this guy came up to me who I'd met a couple of times, and he said, how much do you pay board members? And I said, you got this wrong, Jeff. Board members give money to the organization, then they volunteer the time. And he's like, he couldn't understand, why would someone give to an organization and then you make demands upon them as well? Is there an expectation at Catholic Charities of what a minimum that board members should give or that they should raise?
I mean, if you're going to be on our board, we expect you to support us, but there is not a minimum or a maximum. I mean, we're going to look at the people.
Never
We've got some professors from U of H.
That are on your board?
Yes,
Okay.
and then we have Jeff Hildebrand.
Yeah.
You can't put them in the same category. What we will ask from them will be different. And it's just like someone previously had asked about how much do you ask from a person. You have to look at them, see what they've done with other organizations, see what they've done within yours. I mean, you have to, study this for a little bit and make a educated decision on what amount you're going to ask for when you're making the ask. But with board members, they are one of your greatest assets. I mean, we have an incredible board. And when people open letters from us, they're listed on our letterhead. And on invitations, they're listed there. A lot of times people will open the invitation and they look to see who's on your board. They look to see who's bought the tables. And that's what determines whether they give to us or not. So, I mean, our board is there helping us, whether they're talking to someone about our organization and, you know, doing the 5-minute elevator speech, or it's just having their name there. But we do want them to support us.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of nonprofits do say, you know, well, 2,500 minimum, 5,000 minimum. There's some, I think Crisis Intervention has a $10,000 minimum on their board, but you guys are just sort of setting a normal expectation.
And again, we're a social services agency. So again, we've got people who don't make that much money, but they've got experience we need. We've got.
How big is your board?
We have 23 people on our board.
So not horribly big, right? So. Yeah.
But we have a board and an advisory board.
Okay. And how big is your advisory board?
Our advisory board, I want to say, is probably around 15 to 20.
Okay. Yeah.
But they are very diverse. So, you know, we can't. We don't have. We look at everyone individually and make that determination. And you know what? If they can only give us a small, you know, $100, you know, then we're $100 more than we were.
Denise Small has a question. She wants to know, what type of volunteer management do you guys do? And is that something that you oversee? Does that come under development, or does it come under someone else?
It comes under our HR department. And we do have a lot of volunteers. We do an event at Christmas called Share Your Blessings, and we distribute gifts and gift cards to 50,000 clients. So it's just a monster. And it's driven primarily by volunteers. Corporations doing toy drives, you know, getting the gift cards together, and then, you know, us distributing them. You know, getting all that together and organizing it. And, you know, we've got foster kids, so it's like, okay, this boy needs size 8, this girl needs size 2, you know, so organizing it so the appropriate gifts go to the appropriate clients. But that falls under our HR department. And you can go onto our website and fill out the forms because we deal with foster children. People have to have background checks. And then we love to have our volunteers.
Let me ask you a couple of final questions for this evening. First thing, tell me a little bit about work-life balance. I mean, so many women sitting in the same chair of you have said that they have no work-life balance. Do you have work-life balance?
No. I took over this position, and Cynthia, our CEO, she's going on her 2nd year, and we were like, okay, by May, we're going to have things done by May. You know, we're still in a little bit of a transition period, trying to get everything, you know, as best it can be. Right now, it's getting there, but there's definitely more to the work part.
Yeah. Do you take are you off on the weekends? I mean, do you take vacation? Talk a little bit about that.
I have taken a vacation since I've been in this position for a couple days. And I'm planning one for the week after the gala. But right now we were in a little bit of a reorganization with a new CEO.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're getting there, but right now we're still working through a few things. But I mean, we're doing really well. I know with my team, you know, what we were able to do with the Christmas appeal, I was so proud. And it wasn't me, it was a whole team. I can't take credit for any single thing. You have to work as a group, but it is, and in development, I'm going to a lot of other people's galas and events to see, what are they doing? I try to learn something from everyone every time I go.
Do you
also
learn
meet
something
people.
from everyone?
I try.
Yeah. Are you still convinced? Is yours still the best one?
I'll be honest, no.
What's the best gala?
Well, I don't know if there is a best one. I mean, ours is one of the best,
Yeah.
I think, but is there one best one? No.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think we all have our strengths and things we could do better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of hard, isn't it, when you have done really a lot of work on a gala and you leave thinking, oh, that little bit.
Yeah, and I people will leave and they're like, oh, that was a great event, but I know what went wrong. And I'm like, oh, gosh, why didn't I, the thing is, they don't know. When you're doing special events, a lot of times you're not in the thick of things. You're always one step ahead, or you're spending time in the kitchen because they're not bringing the food out in a timely manner. Or they're like, oh, but someone's speaking, so we're not serving. I'm like, no, keep going. So you know what went wrong, but no one else does.
Yeah.
And I mean, our events have been very successful, and I'm very happy. But yeah, being the person I am, I always know what I could have done better.
Do you have a favorite restaurant in Houston, Diane?
I love Brennan's.
Oh, yeah.
You can go there and you kind of think you're in New Orleans, so it's kind of like a little mini
Very
vacation,
nice.
a little mind vacation.
You ever go there at lunch on a weekday where you get those 25-cent martinis?
I do, but I only watch the people drinking the 25-cent martinis because then I have to walk 2 blocks back and go back to work.
But those pralines, I mean, there's a lot of great things about Brennan's. Brennan's has great food.
But
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful venue,
Yeah.
and it just makes me think
And
that I'm
every
in New
room
Orleans.
is different. It's really nice. Tell me about sort of a secret place in Houston that you really like, park or venue or restaurant, something that people don't know about.
There's a little wine bar by my house called 13 Celsius.
Oh, yeah.
And it used to be my dry cleaners. So it's in between my office and home, so it's an easy place to go, and it's kind of a midtown place.
I
so
love
it's
that place
nice
too.
to.
Little snacks sometimes with your wine, and yeah, very good. And then our final question for the evening: when they make the Diane Cervenka story in Hollywood, who's going to play you? Which actress is the natural to play Diane Cervenka?
I think Charlize Theron.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, very good. Well, you got the blonde hair, the exact match, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking twins.
Well, thank you very much for all the work that you do. Catholic Charities does amazing work in town. I think one of the significant charities, one of the significant nonprofits in Houston, and Catholic Charities all over the country doing some wonderful work. And I think the other thing that's important to know about Catholic Charities is that you're serving a lot of people that aren't Catholic. I mean, I think about the law clinic that Catholic Charities has, that we work very closely with, run by a Muslim woman, and doing a fantastic job, and it's incredible.
Yeah, a lot of people think we're just Catholics helping Catholics, and that's so far from the truth. We're the social service arm of the Catholic Church, but we also have federal funding, and you can't mix church and state. So we are people helping people.
Yeah.
If you need help and we can help you, we will do our best.
Yeah, and it's just about helping people in their time of need, not necessarily working on their soul, because they need this help as well. So,
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Very well. Thank you so much, Diane, for all
Thank
that
you.
you do. Thanks for being here. So we will see you guys next time. I think next week we're not going to have a live class, but I think in subsequent weeks, I think there are 3 more. But let us know how you're doing. We look forward to your reactions and to those presentations and papers. We'll see you next time on the Leadership Studio. Thank you.